Julian Konzern. Julian Konzern, the man who had it all. The wielder of legendary Beyblade, Gravity Destroyer. He was set up to be a formidable antagonist to Team Gangan Galaxy, and I truly believe he had a lot of potential as a character in Metal Masters and beyond. Unfortunately, it does seem that he fell flat. He's seen as a fraud. He is seen as nothing more than the fallen emperor. In this video, I have several ideas on how to improve Julian Konzern's story and give him significantly more strength as a character. And in addition, I think fixing Julian Konzern can fix several other problems that criticisms have had of this series. I enjoyed Julian's introduction in episode 63, The Bay with the Hero's Name, and furthermore in episode 67, Festival of Warriors. I thought it did a really good job introducing Team Excalibur, displaying their strength, and setting them up to be tough opponents to anybody else in the World Championship. Julian is seen a lot as a fraud though, because in every appearance after this, he gets his ass handed. He loses to Jinga in episode 80, Gravity Destroyer, to Damien in episode 90, the guard dog of Hades, Curvex, and to Deshayan in episode 98, the Fallen Emperor. I think in order to keep his established strength, he should have only lost to Damien out of these fights, and I'm going to go into further detail as to how I would change these things. I believe for this conflict, the matchups should stay the same. They should stay the same. I like what they did. But the fight order and the outcomes should have been different. Julian Konzern is a very prideful person. It is at the center of his character. And because of this, I think Julian would have wanted his battle against Jinga to be the first battle to happen. And in order to keep his established strength, he should, after a hard-fought match, emerge victorious. And then in the following matches, because Gangan Galaxy has to win, Masamune defeats Klaus instead of losing, and Tsubasa and Yu defeat Wales and Sophie as normal. I believe this change solves a few criticisms of some other characters, as well as providing a better setup for Konzern. For Jinga, it lessens the problem of him winning every fight by plot armor, and could set him up as a short arc to get better with Galaxy Pegasus, which is generally missing from the season. For Masamune, it gives him another win, so he's not just the fraud on the team who always loses. It also makes Tsubasa's win over Jack in Bafal's Trap, episode 99, create less of a power imbalance between the Gangan Galaxy members. Tsubasa's arc is relatively unchanged by this, but for Julian, it allows him to keep his status of power, and letting his pride soar higher before the Starbreaker fight. And because of his teammates' losses and his own pride, it could also cause Julian to start to push away from the rest of Team Excalibur and to set up his separation after Guard Dog of Hades Curvex. I like this series of fights as is, actually. Julian should be at the height of his pride before being humiliated by Damien in order to create the maximum amount of impact. From the previous changes against the Gangan Galaxy fight, this also sets up Damien as a scarier threat, defeating Julian, who would have, at this point, beaten Jinga. The seeds for Julian to leave Excalibur for Hades Inc. would have also been in place now from the previous changes. But overall, I think Excalibur vs. Starbreaker can be relatively unchanged. The Fallen Emperor. As a kid, this was one of my favorite episodes. It still is. I love the Julian vs. Deshayan fight, and I hate to have any critique of this episode because of that. Although fortunately, I don't have too much to say about this one. Or well, I have a bit to say about this one, but not too much criticism about this one. I think that most of the fight should be left as is. Deshayan should dominate most of the fight, especially from the beginning, because Julian isn't strong here. Julian is still deep in his sorrow, his pride is broken, he is at his lowest point, in the start of the fight against Deshayan. He had just turned on his best friends, he had left all that he'd known, and he lost all that he had. But after Julian gains support from Wales and Sophie, his power should increase enough, just enough, for him to edge out the fight. I believe that the support from his friends would bring more impact because he pushed them away after losing to Gang Gang Galaxy and then furthermore after losing to Starbreaker. He would reawaken as a true Blader, and his Blader spirit would get to burn brightly, and then realizing his mistakes, he would go with Deshayan and the others to help against the battle against Ziggurat and Spiral Force. I believe that these changes, all of them summed up until this point, would give Julian a full character arc for Metal Masters, as well as giving him better staying power for Metal Fury. And I don't think that this would damage Deshayan as a character or a Blader, because I think it is reasonable that Deshayan and Rock Zarafa lose to a fully powered Julian Konzern. Now, what I say here about him in Metal Fury might be a little controversial just because I think Metal Fury is the most controversial season out of the Metal Fight seasons. One big criticism of Metal Fury is the wave of new characters taking center stage. Julian very well could have been a legendary Blader, as Varieris is said to be the Sword of the Gods, the bag that Gravity Destroyer was based on. And as much as I love King, King is one of my favorite legendary Bladers, and probably one of the better written characters in that season, Julian should have been the one to wield Varieris. Because the legendary Bay is still Varieris, it is still the Mars Bay, so there are no problems with him being one of the Solar System Bladers. And after awakening as a legendary Blader, Julian could work as a good foil for Chris. Chris is a Blader who turned his back on the world after losing his friends at the World Championship, and Julian is a Blader who also tried to turn his back on the world after pushing his friends away at the World Championship, but he was brought back from the brink because his friends stood by his side anyway. Julian should have been the one to defeat Chris and teach him about the importance of reliable friends in episode 133, Four Hearts, instead of Jinga, for a more meaningful speech from someone who could relate to what Chris is feeling and thinking. Overall, I think Julian Konzern had a lot of wasted potential over Metal Masters and Fury, and I think the changes I've proposed here would have created a stronger character overall. And they're not perfect, granted. I'm not a perfect writer, but I do think that they are better than what we did get. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This is my first video essay, so don't destroy me too much. And, like and share it if you want to hear more of what I have to say. I do plan on doing more Beyblade content in the future, so, it would really help to hear some support. Thank you. I'll see you guys in the next one.